Snowbreak Containment Zone has been down since March the 2nd. I'm now recording this video on the 2nd of May, 2 whole months later, and we are still none the wiser what is actually going on. But today we're going to do some inferring and attempt to look at probably what is happening, and I'm sure you're already aware of what is more than likely happening with this game. But I thought we'd look back to some other stuff as well and discuss how we kind of got here and what's going to happen going forward, because we can only do a lot of assumption with this actual game because there's been no official statements on the reasons for and what is exactly happening. All we have was a Twitter post back on March the 2nd from Snowbreak Containment Zone talking about server maintenance for Snowbreak Containment Zone will begin on March the 2nd and the servers will be temporarily closed for technical maintenance due to the large volume of data involved. The maintenance period may be extended. We kindly ask for your patience. The fact is, they never really gave us a date of when the maintenance would end, so the idea that it's going to be extended, it's like, well, we don't know, so it could extend for as long as, and we don't know how long that extension was anyway. But one thing we can look at from that, if we read between the lines, is they talk about the large volume of data involved. Now, what could that mean? To me, that means more than likely one thing: massive censorship. We are seeing a huge amount of censorship being put onto this game, in my opinion, from the Master Love situation, visuals, systems, pretty much everything. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff yoinked out of this game, and I think it's probably going to be the final nail in the coffin for this game, because there's a lot of people who obviously don't want to see the censorship, and the real reason this game was actually somewhat profitable, relatively speaking, was the fact that the game leaned heavily into fan service post-launch. This was a game that started to struggle and then realized, you know what, we can probably make a lot of money if we really lean into fan service. And you know what, it actually worked, but it looks like they attracted the eyes of the wrong people. But before we get into how that probably happened, shall we talk about like what actually happened prior to that? This isn't the first time that Snowbreak has found itself in some sort of controversy. If we go back to August and July of 2024, in July there was a bit of a situation regarding voice actors. Now, there was nothing ever officially spoken about, but there was a lot of assumptions once again on what was happening, that Snowbreak was seen as a bit of a risque title, but it's not the only risque title, but specifically was seen as potentially a bit of a brand risk for some voice actors. There was never anything official from any voice actor associations to say that you shouldn't work with this game, but there was a lot of community sentiment that people believed the voice actors may have been pressured in the back rooms to potentially not work with this game, and how it could maybe be seen as a issue for the resume, for the CV going forward if they wanted to work with titles such as the Big Huyo games, Kuro games, and all this sort of stuff. It was maybe seen as something that could stunt your career. And back then as well, in August, we saw voice actors change for characters like Marion, Life, S, Nita, Haru, Moxia, Fenny, Frisha, Acacia, Cirrus, Enya, Chenxing, and Echel. And there was huge assumptions, community discussions on what actually was going on. Apparently as well, they tried to bring back certain EN voice actors, and it was responded with a resounding no. The people were not wanting to or willing to work with this title. And again, we still go on a lot of assumptions with this. This is one thing with Snowbreak Containment Zone. A lot of the stuff is spoken about, but it's never really officially reported on, and the sources are always quite vague regarding what happened, and it leads to obviously a vacuum of information and a lot of assumption coming from the player bases as well. Now, if we move on into August, Snowbreak actually announced major outfit changes and discontinuations to some of the skins, and that was then led to that being attached to censorship as well, because the skins that were all affected were skins that were released prior to the age rating changing, because the game actually went to being a mature rated game. The skins post age change were not affected, but all the skins before were actually discontinued and changed, or the ones that were affected were all prior to that. Not all of the skins, but the ones that were affected were all prior to the actual age rating change, which led people to believe that that was maybe enacted because it was either proactive or reactive. I tend to think it was proactive to attempt to stop the regulators coming in, that they changed that to make sure they were working within the rules, that those skins were sold when it was marketed towards a younger audience. Let's discontinue those, and the ones after the fact are all good to go. People who bought them were fine to keep them, but this is just two previous situations the game found itself in. Now, fast forward to 2026, February 24th, the collaboration between Snowbreak Containment Zone and the China Post was announced. 2 days later, it was cancelled. It was supposed to start on the 28th of February and run through to March the 6th. Marketing was released. They showed off a bunch of stuff regarding the actual collaboration, and then 2 days later, it was cancelled, citing scheduling issues. Basically, it just couldn't work out at that particular time. Then, not long after, we see the game go into indefinite maintenance. Now, what did that collaboration do? Well, it caused a lot of backlash. It caused a lot of criticism. It was cancelled 2 days later, and it was attributed, as I say, to schedule adjustments. The China Post confirmed the event and material sales had all been withdrawn, but it got a lot of backlash. It saw rapid criticism spread across Chinese social platforms like Tiba and Weibo, eventually becoming significant enough to attract mainstream media attention. A lot of people saw a government-affiliated outlet working with something that was considered a controversial title within CN, to the point where the media got involved, and I believe this then attracted the wrong eyes. This basically crossed the wrong desk, and the wrong person was, oh, what's this then? Let's take a little look into this. And this leads me to believe we're not in a proactive situation now. We're in a reactive situation. Prior to that, the changes to the skins were made, I believe, the developers realizing if we don't change this, we're going to have some problems. Maybe conversations were had, but nothing official was enacted, and they decided to move preemptively before the regulators actually got involved. But where we're at now leads me to believe we're in a reactive situation. The regulators have stepped in. The regulators have demanded changes so drastic and so immediately enacted that it required the game to be taken from its actual service, to be taken down to enact these titles, because I believe that potentially, now I don't know the exact rules, but I believe it was potentially maybe either one, to stop the cessation of the live service, to stop them cancelling altogether, or potentially stop crippling fines. Now, who knows? Maybe they might get hit with retroactive fines for potentially skirting or breaking regulations before this actually happened, but I don't even know if they did break any regulatory rules. It might just be that somebody seen it, they've made some quick changes, because in China, when the government wants to make changes, that can work very quickly because of the government setup over there. They can make things change, and they can demand things of corporations and entities and individuals that other countries have to go through maybe a few more steps to actually enact. And I think that's what we're seeing here. A company that's had to bend the knee immediately, and that's led to the live service literally being brought to a halt while they get all these changes made. And this is why I say, when I go back to this, when they talk about the volume of data involved, what the hell does that mean? All that means to me is we're going to see major system changes, we're going to see major theme changes, and we're going to see major visual changes. I think there's going to be much less gooning, there's going to be much less master love stuff, and there's going to be much less systems that allow you to get a little bit comfortable with your favorite waifus. Now, what does this mean? Post-launch, though, we've got a game that was saved by the goon, was saved by the fan service, that now might be in a position to have to strip all of that from the game, to a point that might be more strict than other games because they've attracted the regulatory attention. Now, they're probably in a position as well where they have to maybe send all of this off to review before they can turn servers back on, or they're just in a position where they want to make sure everything has to happen before the servers are turned back on, because they don't want to then be put in a situation where they're back in limbo and having to take the game down, or having to to make major changes, it would really suck for them to come back into service after a month or two of being down, to then only have to make drastic changes once more to appease the regulators. Now, when will the game come back? We just don't know. They have been completely stum on all their official outlets and social media, which is leading to the community starting to fear the demise of the game, which makes sense. I think even if the game comes back with a bang after this, it's going to be difficult. They're accruing costs all the while here. Who knows if they've actually received fines as well. Now, I think if that's the case, we'll probably start to see information coming out from China, from social media platforms as well, where they can prove that that actually happened. Who actually knows? I'm sure we'll get some sort of information post-service revival. But again, as I say, when it comes down to the voice actor situations or the previous skin situations, everything was all a little bit vague. We got a lot of vague posting, and I think we're probably going to see the continuation of the vague posting around this situation as well, unless the regulators or the government themselves or the media gets involved and actually gives us some real information regarding this, or people are able to do a little bit of digging, or we get some leaks. But when the game comes back, if it is drastically changed, if it is massively censored, if we do see all of these systems that games come to be known for removed, I think that will be the final nail in the coffin of Snowbreak Containment Zone, because we had a game, as I said, that was saved by the goon, and if the goon's removed, people are not going to be happy. The people who are supporting the game because of the goon are not going to want to support the game. And you're going to have that backlash. Even in China, people hate to see censorship. People hate it when the government gets involved and starts messing with the products that we all love and enjoy. And you might not like Snowbreak Containment Zone, but fan service enjoyers did. And it's kind of what kept the game afloat. And if that is removed, which I do believe a lot of it is going to be removed, to what degree, who knows? But I believe we're going to see a quite different game when it comes back. As I say, they talk about the massive volume of data involved. What could that mean? Back-end changes, maybe. Structural corporation changes as well, potentially. That's not specific to that actual statement, but I think it means that we're seeing drastic changes with the game, changes that can't be done in a couple of days. And because the maintenance has gone on for this period of time, it's long enough to cause issues, but it's not long enough to make drastic changes to the game itself in terms of production and polish. So my idea is, well, if the game came back and was just a better product, maybe that could save it, but they're not going to be able to make those changes within a month or two while they're having to make all these other changes. We're going to see a game that's probably going to be back to its previous fan service situation, and I believe that's probably not going to be something that's going to work out for them. I think we might be in the twilight era now of Snowbreak Containment Zone. That's not a hot take, but I believe if it does come back a changed game, I think we will see the end days for Snowbreak Containment Zone. And it is a shame. It's a game that I stopped playing quite a while ago myself personally. I was desperately looking for something that gave me a Division feeling in the gacha space. It's why I was a little bit looking forward to DNA. Not that it's more Warframe, but just the third person shooter aspect. I just want a gacha game that does third-person shooting really well, and this kind of scratched that itch somewhat. But yeah, I think a lot of people were there for the direction the game had taken, and if now it is forced to make a U-turn, I think it's going to be incredibly damaging for the company, for the brand. It'll be very much interesting to see what happens. I will be waiting to find out more. Guys, if you've got any information down below that you've got some sources to, let me know. I'd be interested to check them out, because I've done a little bit of looking on CN. I've been looking around some media outlets. I've been looking on Reddit. I know, Twitter. I've even used AI to get me some sources, and it's all just vague posting. There is no official information that I have been able to find that actually points towards what the hell is going on. We can only really look to that it was definitely, more than likely, something to do with the China Post situation, because that collaboration happened, and then within a couple of weeks, we see the game going into indefinite maintenance. That can't be a coincidence. And as I say, when we look back to the skin changes and the voice actor situations, this is a game that looks like it's been a bit of a black sheep of the family within the gacha space within China for quite a while now. And now I think we're just seeing the culmination of all of that. That was able to avoid the eyes of the regulators for a while, but I think now they've come under the regulators' hammer, and we're going to see massive changes be forced on this game. So yeah, it'd be definitely interesting to see what happens going forward. Guys, let me know what you think down below. As I say, if you've got any information, hit me up. I'm always willing to find out new stuff. And if you've enjoyed the video, guys, give it a like, subscribe if you're new. And yeah, let's hope Snowbreak Containment Zone returns bigger and better than ever. I don't think it's going to, though. Anyway, I'll see you next time, guys. Ta-ra.